Okay, so we will start. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Humanitarian Talks. I hope everybody hear me well. And welcome to the session collaborating for cash and voucher assistance, delivery in increasing crisis complexity. I am Jimena Peroni. I am from Kashka, and I will be moderating the session today. So first of all, just to remind you that we will have the chat here in the WebEx, so you can introduce yourself, ask questions, comments, share your thoughts in the chat. We will try to moderate and address as much as possible. But first of all, we will first welcome to Mr. Andreas Papakonstantinou, DG ECHO Director for Neighborhood and Middle East, reinforcing the long-standing commitment on cash assistance, introducing the DG ECHO thematic policy document on cash transfers. So welcome, Mr. Andreas. The floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank the Collaborative Cash Delivery Network for organizing a talk on this important issue. I particularly welcome the fact that this event has also a strong localization angle. A number of speakers in this panel are people who have experience with cash assistance on the ground, and I think it's very important to listen to their voices in order to strengthen our alignment with local needs and perspectives. Cash is very high on the humanitarian agenda. Just to mention that in the crisis theater of Ukraine today, with all that is happening there, the humanitarian country team has recommended to use multi-purpose cash transfers as the default modality. Cash transfers have proven to be instrumental in providing affected people with a stronger sense of dignity, equipping them with the means and flexibility to decide and prioritize their recovery. In addition to being a very people-centered modality, cash transfers have played a catalyst role for innovation, driving market-based approaches, the increased digitalization of humanitarian assistance, and developing linkages with social protection systems. Cash is strongly associated with other reforms, such as the drive for localization I referred to earlier, or accountability to affected populations, and the greening of humanitarian assistance. DG ECHO has been at the forefront of this transformation for over a decade. We are a reference donor, both in terms of policy and delivery of cash. And this is why I am delighted to formally launch today DG ECHO's thematic policy document number 3 on cash transfers. This marks a significant step change from our 2013 thematic policy document on cash and vouchers. It elevates cash to the level of a strategic policy and reflects the significant evidence on the efficiency and effectiveness of cash. It also embeds best practices from across the humanitarian system. And based on this evidence, DG ECHO's policy expresses an explicit preference for cash over vouchers. The cash policy summarizes the position of DG ECHO and provides guidance on the use of cash transfers in responding to humanitarian needs. The primary audience for this policy is DG ECHO's staff and humanitarian partners. A number of cross-cutting issues such as protection, disaster preparedness, greening, and localization are reflected in the note. And the cash policy also encourages innovation through digitalization and interoperability. It is structured in a practical way, clarifying DG ECHO's expectations of its partners while linking these to a checklist that is structured according to DG ECO's system for contract management. The cash policy is complemented by DG ECO large-scale cash guidance note, which forms the Annex 1 of the note. It contains specific considerations for cash programs equal to or above 10 million euros. We believe that large-scale transfers have a strong potential to avoid the fragmentation of efforts and avoids monopolistic approaches. However, it also sets out that large-scale cash needs careful consideration, and it is to allow all actors present in a country to contribute to the definition of such programs. We hope that the guidance will set an appropriate balance for setting up such programs. The consultation process with DG ECO partners has been extensive, in particular on the large-scale cash guidance note. We are extremely grateful for the invaluable inputs provided by the different stakeholders throughout the process, which was a long but very productive one. Today, I would like particularly to highlight our strong partnership with the CCD, who collectively exemplifies the collaboration and the harmonized approach, which is basically at the heart of this policy. We appreciate the ongoing collaboration at policy level, namely through the donor cash forum and operationally through our country level partnerships. The themes that the CCD have identified for this talk resonate with numerous elements of our policy. In particular, to name just a few, the importance of harmonized approaches for cash assistance and streamlined systems, which have proven to provide substantial efficiency and effectiveness gains. In support of coordination, the importance of interoperable systems for the management of information, or the need for cash assistance to be targeted based on vulnerability and not status, taking into account the protection concerns of individuals and groups. These are some of the issues addressed in depth in our comprehensive policy. We will publicize the policy extensively. This includes engagement with other donors. DG ECO has been co-leading also the Donor Cash Forum and has been strongly engaged in recent efforts on improving global and field-based cash coordination structures. We are confident that structural improvements on this issue will happen soon, and we will continue to support this process. We look forward to working with you all on the uptake of this policy and its utilization, and to continue to cement the transformational potential of cash on humanitarian assistance. It goes without saying, if there are any questions or thoughts you would like to share with us on this, we will have a dedicated meeting quite soon where we are going to be open to discuss with you all the issues related to cash. Many thanks, and I wish you a very fruitful panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea. It's been really enlightening. And now, as Mr. Andrea was commenting, the idea is to try to give the voices to the different local stakeholders and the local partners, where we will try to feed in to the different uptake and examples and practices that collaboration is reflecting on the ground. But first, I will like to give the floor to Mrs. Catherine Tech, Global Director, Humanitarian Cash and Voucher Programming, the co-lead from the CCD. So, Catherine, if it's possible for you, can you clear for us what the CCD means? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimena, and thank you so much, Mr. Papakonstantinou. We really appreciate DG ECO's decision to update the cash voucher assistance policy and to actually make a very comprehensive guidance document and policy document for humanitarian actors across the board. So what is the CCD and why is the CCD engaging in this? The CCD is a collaborative cash delivery network, which is a global and local network of agencies that jointly deliver about 80% of all last mile cash assistance operating in every crisis context globally that includes cash programming. Between these 14 INGOs and about 6 local NGOs, they collectively manage or deliver about $2 or more billion every year of cash assistance. Our members are dedicated to making the humanitarian sphere more collaborative and efficient through common programming approaches and in how to operate and scale up the use of cash voucher globally in locally appropriate ways. And to do this, we try to bring together the best available cash actors in a given context to make adaptive partnerships focused on delivering more timely and more impactful cash and voucher assistance to people affected in crisis. So we work in places like Colombia, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Nigeria, South Sudan, and today you will hear from a number of those colleagues from local actors that work with the INGO and other sector actors to actually enhance gap filling, enhance the local capacity scale up. We have key areas of work, and we very much appreciate that those are now much more reflected in the updated ECHO cash policy. For example, data sharing, data protection, and data interoperability, the areas of how to link with social protection and how to harmonize cash voucher approaches, including with government. You will hear later about that. The localization aspect, what does it mean? What does it take to enhance local inclusion, local equity, access, and accountability of any stakeholder, international and national stakeholders in the cash community? And finally, also the aspect of how we can mitigate against climate change impact and enhance mitigation. A number of our members actually are working towards developing standards. We really, really want to appreciate that field perspectives are critical because cash policy can only be implemented in given contexts as much as there is need to understand also context factors that sometimes are inhibitors of cash assistance. So how can we overcome to promote choice and dignity and enable self-resilience and social inclusion and economic inclusion through financial means? I really wish that you have a very insightful discussion today, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, that's great. And actually now what we are going to do is, well, first I will introduce in English and then I will explain how to switch to hear our next panelist in French and to hear also the translator in English. So the first speaker of today is going to be Mr. Nyanya Rainuvelo, who is from the National Office of Disaster and Risk Management from Madagascar. He's chairman of the IPC Technical Working Group and the National Vulnerability Assessment Committee of Madagascar. He's the technical focal point at the food security and livelihood sector and at the cash working group. The National Risk and Disaster Management Office is the operational structure attached to the Ministry of the Interior, and it's responsible for coordinating humanitarian preparedness and response and chairs all the activities of the Disaster Responders Think Tank, which brings together all the country's humanitarian actors. So we will welcome Mr. Nyanya Rainuvelo, but first, before you start, sir, I will just give some instructions to the participants that if you want to hear the interpreter, to listen to the interpreter, you have to go to the left. You have a small icon, kind of a world icon, and you will have to switch from original audio floor to English. Once you are there in English, you will have to balance the audio towards the interpreter if you want to hear the interpreter. If you want to hear in French, you just stay in the original audio. So welcome, and I give you the floor, Mr. Rainuvelo.
Merci de m'avoir accordé la parole. Bonjour à tous. Tout d'abord, j'aimerais vous présenter donc le profil de risque de Madagascar. Selon une étude de la Banque mondiale établie en 2018, les pertes engendrées par les catastrophes, dont le cyclone, l'inondation et séisme, sont évaluées à 100 millions de dollars annuellement. Le cyclone constitue l'aléa majeur avec des pertes directes évaluées en moyenne à 87 millions de dollars et des aides d'urgence évaluées à 20 millions de dollars. On rappelle, cette année a été une saison cyclonique très active avec 4 cyclones en l'espace d'un mois et demi, avec plus de 600 000 personnes affectées. La sécheresse affecte également le grand sud de Madagascar, avec chaque année près de 1,3 million de personnes en IPC 3 et plus. La dernière crise de 2021 nécessite une enveloppe d'urgence évaluée à 230 millions de dollars. Pour les activités humanitaires, l'OCHA coordonne l'appui de tous les partenaires au niveau du BNGC, qui est l'entité gouvernementale en charge de la gestion des risques et des catastrophes. Le BNGC et le ministère en charge de la protection sociale sont le lead du Cash Working Group, opérationnel depuis 2019, et qui regroupe les acteurs étatiques et non étatiques tels que l'UNICEF, Banque mondiale, le PAM, le FID qui est étatique et des ONG internationales. La gouvernance des risques est assez sectorialisée à Madagascar. Cependant, des efforts sont constatés lorsque, pour la première fois en 2016, un plan de relèvement pour les victimes de la sécheresse a été élaboré pour constituer le pont entre l'humanitaire et le développement. Ce genre de plan a été élaboré également en 2018 après le passage d'un cyclone. Mais les urgences humanitaires sont assez récurrentes. Ceci dit, il est nécessaire à ce que l'aide humanitaire soit intégrée dès le départ dans des réponses à plus long terme, et cela dans la mesure du possible. La modalité cash, de par sa nature flexible, multisectorielle, rapidement déployable, doit s'inscrire dans ce tracé, et c'est ce qui est soutenu dans le guideline DG ECO. La mise en œuvre des interventions en cash est encore très récente à Madagascar, juste après la validation de la politique nationale de la protection sociale en 2015. En 2018, cette politique a été déclinée en stratégie. En 2019, un manuel des opérations protection sociale réactive de choc a été élaboré et validé pour l'aléa sécheresse. Le cash est considéré comme à la fois une modalité d'intervention de protection sociale et humanitaire. Cette optique correspond aux explications évoquées par le guideline DG ECO. Je cite, la programmation cash peut être complétée par d'autres activités sectorielles pour accroître l'impact et la résilience. La programmation cash peut également s'inscrire dans des appuis sur le long terme en tant que filets sociaux de sécurité. Malgré ces avancées, un gap est observé pour le cash en vue des réponses au choc à évolution rapide mais prédictible. Il n'y a pas de document cadre permettant de guider les acteurs, même si des interventions cash avaient déjà été menées par certains partenaires humanitaires, comme pensé dans la politique éco. Les modalités cash ne sont pas intégrées dans les plans de contingence, ni dans les plans sectoriels, ni dans les documents cadres traitant l'approche Early Warning, Early Action, Forecast-Based Financing. Or, un tel document cadre permettra une harmonisation des approches et nous permettra d'être plus efficaces et efficientes. Car, comme le mentionne la politique de la DG ECO, l'action anticipative et les mécanismes de réponse rapide peuvent être des mécanismes plus appropriés pour aider les personnes touchées dans une situation qui se détériore rapidement. Des activités ont été déjà menées et pourraient être proposées dans ce document, comme la mise en commun des bases de données des personnes vulnérables, qui doit passer par l'uniformisation des formulaires de collecte. Ce processus a déjà été expérimenté lors de la dernière inondation à Tana. Il a pour avantage de faciliter la détection des doublons, le suivi des personnes vulnérables, les activités des acteurs impliqués. Pour des zones victimes du cyclone, la digitalisation et la mise en commun des bases de données se heurtent à des problèmes. Réseau téléphonique coupé, coupure d'électricité, absence ou perte de carte d'identité. Pour les cyclones, le formulaire devrait être léger, numérique ou physique, pour permettre la mise en œuvre rapide des caches, mais doit répondre également à ce souci de mise en commun. Par ailleurs, la fixation des taux reste problématique car elle varie suivant les organisations et suivent des logiques propres aux acteurs. Ainsi, l'initiative des membres du Cash Working Group est louable lorsqu'à travers une ONG internationale, avec l'appui d'un expert cash cap, On a pris l'initiative de mettre en place ce document pour éclairer les acteurs dans les différents domaines de définition du cash, montant, durée de transfert, ciblage, par la mise en commun et la valorisation des expériences terrain des acteurs. Nous trouvons que ce processus d'harmonisation intégrant tous les acteurs dont le gouvernement est pertinent. Mais cela est nécessaire pour plus de transparence et pour que les réponses à travers le cash dans le cadre d'un aléa à évolution rapide soient vraiment adaptées aux besoins des populations vulnérables au centre de notre action. Comme l'a dit Diego, encourage les liens entre humanitaires, solutions à long terme et systèmes de protection sociale pour être réactifs au choc. Nous insistons sur le nexus humanitaire, protection sociale et développement. L'établissement de ce lien nécessite une forte coordination stratégique des acteurs humanitaires avec les acteurs de protection sociale via des forums tels que les Cash Working Group. Toujours dans la politique, il est mentionné que les acteurs du développement devraient aider le gouvernement à renforcer les systèmes de protection sociale, mais plus que cela, le gouvernement devrait être invité à co-construire les réponses, notamment à travers la préparation des réponses aux urgences. En effet, pour bâtir ce lien, la participation active de tout un chacun est nécessaire, et c'est là depuis l'élaboration des différents programmes de protection sociale, de développement ou des plans humanitaires jusqu'à sa mise en œuvre pour qu'il y ait une continuité de cohérence d'action en vue de réduire d'une manière notable la vulnérabilité de la population exposée. Merci de votre attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Renovelo. I really want to highlight what was mentioned about it's important for when we talk about nexus, when we talk about linkages with social protection, that we really invite the governments not only should be invited, but it needs to be invited to construct the response, particularly through the preparation of the emergency response. So I really appreciate that last challenging comment also on the policy, which is always great to continue the discussion. So, so now what we are going to continue with Mrs. Mimidou Achakpa, a women's rights activist, which is currently the Executive Director of Women's Right to Education Program, a CCD Nigeria member, and an NGO with United Nations Consultative Status of Economic and Social Council, the ECOSOC. She has over a decade of experience in project management and extensive background in governance, gender, humanitarian, and disarmament issues. So Ms. Mimidou will share with us about the roles NGO play to strengthen gender-sensitive protection risk analysis, as well as participation and empowerment of affected people. Mrs. Mimidou, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Men and women are affected by risk differently, but can also face different types of risk due to their being men or women. Incorporating a gender dimension in gender protection policy and practice influences the types of risk tackled and shapes program design as well as that. NGOs ought to target cash programs that put people at the center, that seek, share, and act upon their feedback. So, what are the roles NGOs? Can play? NGOs can play roles in strengthening gender-sensitive protection and risk analysis to ensure the safety and dignity of targeted beneficiaries by ensuring that local staff understanding on protection and what constitutes protection risk is well comprehended. Data can be gathered on existing protection risk. NGOs can identify the most significant risks and vulnerabilities among targeted beneficiaries. They can also conduct assessment of the potential interaction with the project of whatever project, both how risk may impact the project and how the project may exacerbate risk. They can development of mitigation plans that measures for each risk that interacts with the project. For instance, my organization implemented a cash transfer aimed at economically empowering the rural women who were most affected by the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. And cash transfer was done to 498 women across 36 states, that's covering the entire state of Nigeria and the Federal Capital Territory. Additionally, we are currently implementing a project in one of the northeastern states on Girls for Girls education, where a component of it has to do with cash. So we haven't been able, because of the remoteness of the locations, we can't, they don't have bank accounts. So what we did was in some communities, we engaged the services of vendors, and the monies are paid to them through the vendors. Some we pay cash, on some where there are banks close by, we go to those banks and ask them to the beneficiaries to go to the bank and then collect money. We have just concluded another project with UNDP now, which involves also cash, payment of cash to beneficiaries. The 4 communities we have worked in, they don't have any banks nearby. So we wrote to UNDP to see if we can pay beneficiaries cash, and they gave express approval for us to do that. And that is because when they did the analysis and discovered that at the design of the proposal, those that designed the proposal did not factor in or go to do a needs assessment in those communities to understand the local settings of those communities. So cash assistance can be used to strengthen gender inclusion by NGOs operationally through the inclusion of structures and processes that ensure that beneficiaries take a leading role in designing, shaping, and evaluating humanitarian cash assistance. The use of multiple channels such as phones and face-to-face meetings to have access to different groups. Also, feedback should be systematically collected and analyzed in a timely way, with response explanations provided to communities on how their feedback has been adapted. Other approaches that may be included could be the use of participatory budgeting and monitoring, community service management committees, and building democratic and enabling environments, addressing the broader enabling environment in order to strengthen legitimacy of public institutions and enable more inclusive political settlements by, for example, supporting measures to increase the transparency of governments, private sector, and voluntary organizations, as well as donors. Now, this cannot be done, during the course of work. We identified some gaps, but for the purpose of this presentation and the short time for it, I have been able to identify 3 gaps. And these are CVA programs are often designed to enable people to meet their basic needs and access essential services that are inaccessible to them, So an in-depth understanding on how multiple and intersecting discrimination factors that these groups may face when accessing humanitarian assistance and which may place them at risk, and how these factors can be considered when weighing demographics into cash and voucher assistance criteria is still a gap that needs further attention. And last but not the least, the use of cash and voucher assistance to support addressing specific requirements and facilitating equal access without discrimination, or to address situations of deliberate actions. So these are the gaps I have identified. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mimidu. We will get back to some questions after, but I really want to thank, because this example also reads a lot on terms of on the policy, when the importance of risk-informed approach and how to identify and address the different risks and try to understand that the targeting process is also informed by the different risks that men and women face during the different type of the response. Thank you very much. We will get back to some points and questions afterwards. Now we will give the floor to Mr. Abba Yusuf, who is the Executive Director of Grow Strong Foundation, a member of the Nigeria CCD Network and the State Coordinator of Youth Network of the Lake Chad region. Yusuf nurtures and advocates for a keen interest in designing and implementing knowledge sharing and advocacy strategies about child protection, cash intervention, and girl-child education at the grassroots level, including coordination, governance, and sustainable management. Mr. Yusuf will be sharing on different challenges and opportunities on targeting, registration, and digital cash and voucher assistance. Welcome, Mr. Yusuf. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Amima, for the very beautiful introduction. You said it all. So, yeah, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. Yes, as Jemima clearly mentioned, I'm just here to give a brief background as well as our experience in implementing cash and voucher assistance. Basically, our own intervention here in Northeast Nigeria, we look at how we can integrate cash and voucher into child protection. So our cash for protection intervention focuses on basically how we engage beneficiaries, how we look at our beneficiaries targeting in terms of registration, data protection, as well as data sharing agreement among the CCD members. So in as much as we generally work with children that are affected by the armed conflict, we see that when targeting or registering the beneficiaries, we look at how we can be able to integrate those children and families that are highly vulnerable, such as the unaccompanied and separated children under foster care, as well as children that are formally associated with armed groups, to ensure that they benefit from this cash assistance that we are giving in Northeast Nigeria. So few things we observe when it comes to registering, because we believe our own approach is our cash assistance is integrated into the case management process, that is the child protection case management process. So when we come to registration, it's usually very hard in terms of digital registration, which is not really feasible in this context of the Northeast, where because of the illiteracy level, even though there are some INGO as well as UN body try to kind of introduce the digital registration, which will make it very hard to capture due to the third-party involvement as well as the remoteness of such location. So we are only left to go into normal registration process and cash transfer modalities. And another simple practical example we are having is we have some few restrictions by the government policy on terms of cash movement, where we are meant to declare any cash that is going into the DPL to the government before it is being taken, especially when it's above some limited level. So this makes our work much more hard. But however, with the support of the CCD network here in Northeast Nigeria, we in an NGO feel that there is participation and there is a technical guidance in terms of data gathering as well as data sharing among each of the members of this organization, where we look at all these vulnerable group of children or female-headed household or their caregivers are being supported. So, and one approach we usually do as protection agency, we look at this principal approach of 2:1 approach. One, we look at those children that are formally associated with armed group before we register one in a living community. Then we have to look at 2 vulnerable children, where we ensure that to discourage joining the armed group, as well as most of the beneficiaries are being captured, of which it's usually, when I was reading through the cash policy, we find it like these are practical things that are happening, but this cash policy has really enhanced how we will go henceforward to improve our programming in terms of cash for protection activities. So yes, one other issue that I would like to also bring our attention is issue of accountability to the affected population. Yes, basically, as GSF approach, as well as with the support of the CCD network, we find it like the best program in terms of cash programming is the empowerment of the beneficiaries. The empowerment is very much important, the beneficiary to know what are the activities and what they intend to achieve and how they will be able to access those markets as well as those cash in the ground. So their empowerment and participation right from the beginning, it is very vital through a community-led activities. I think many of the issues will be solved. Take a simple example that we are working in when we engage those community people, that is the community vendors or community third party in that location, we find it very easy our cash intervention reach more wider group than most than the normal conventional way that is happening. So this is one way we have to enhance our accountability affected population. So I would love to also share some few opportunities in terms of lesson learned in terms of our involvement in the cash programming. One of the issues now we involve is the barrier to funding, which remains concentrated within the handful of international organizations. We continue to face this barrier in accessing humanitarian funds due to what we call normally the technical capacity of NGO. But believe me now, there are many organizations, many NGO or in-country organizations that have stand to that level, and they can easily have that knowledge of intervention within the communities. So another lesson learned that we see when joining the CDA, we find it that the CCD network provides us an avenue for national NGOs, especially to participate in the decision making, developing a policy, reviewing a data sharing agreement, among other activities. So this is to tell you that, yeah, we as GSF joining this group, it is very much effective and it's a very well avenue to enhance our capacity. So notwithstanding, I have like few recommendations which I would also like to make to this forum. One is to ensure that we advocate for donors for strengthening of the technical and institutional capacity of local NGO, especially for them to be able to do very good cash programming in a higher level. And we really need to see that we promote equal and principle of partnership with local organizations, especially in the land use, that this will really improve our localization by ground bargain in terms of localization strategy. So language that asserting that local NGOs or local organizations do not have the capacity usually perpetuates power imbalance in the field among us, because we believe in terms of access, we provide the access. In terms of identifying the most vulnerable beneficiary, we can easily know our people because we are in with them and can easily do that. And then we really need to include local voices at our level of decision making. This is also another recommendation that we'd like to give. And lastly, which is very much important, is connecting with a mentor, with the mentors who not just the capacity building looking at, but connecting with mentors who has supported or run a successful cash program in other districts so as to assist national NGOs in managing their cash intervention. But all in all, I would like to kind of conclude by saying that if we are truly committed to our localization effort, there is need for advocating for donors for dedicated funding for local NGO to cover a critical gaps in their institutional capacity. So that is all I have for now. But however, I'm always standby for more question or clarification where required. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jamila.
Fantastic, Ava. Yes, I want to highlight some takeaways. Yes, we were talking about power imbalance, local voices, decision-making local voices in decision making. Exactly, this is what we're talking about. And I hope that when we talk, when the policy speaks about equal partnership with local response and localization agenda, it's also speaking to all the recommendations that you are sharing here. So we are about to have the 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes left. So I just wanted to wrap up a bit, and then I will put a question to you. I will first give the question so you can start thinking about it. I will give one question to all. If you can summarize what harmonization, collaboration means to you from your perspective, and I wanted to also to link everything on the feeding the initial presentation of and the launching of the document of the DG Eco policy. So we all suggest to read thoroughly. It's a really comprehensive document. It is structured based on by outcome and different topics, and you can navigate really easily. So it talks about, it speaks on operationalizing the humanitarian peace development nexus. So it gives different examples, and it is really linked to the presentation also on what Mr. Randomivelo was discussing. So make the link, make the recommendation. Let's hear what the government has to say, and let's bring it into previously into the construction of the response. Then it is the second phase is it targets the most vulnerable. It talks about a risk-informed approach, it assessments, response analysis, bringing the socioeconomic vulnerability strongly into to address the different cash response. So considering the different risks, so it's really linked to what Mrs. Mimidu also was recommending and suggesting, as also as ABA with the different protection lens. I have a quote from the policy, which is really interesting. You can reflect on also. It's a protection sensitive vulnerability targeting does not automatically translate into protection outcome. So it is really linked on what ABA was saying. The four chapter, let's say, from the policy aims to adequate, equitable, and timely. So we are talking in this chapter, the policy is talking about basic need approach, adequate and equitable transfers, preparedness, a lot of what has Mrs. Mimidu also comment on, and Mr. Nena Ranovelo also comment on addressing the different basic need gaps and the importance at the different stages of the response, while at the same time the key issues on strengthening capacity and localizing also the preparedness phase of the response, as Ava was saying. The fourth is the provides value for money, harmonized cash operation, operational model, digitalization, data protection, interoperability, totally speaking the language of the really the added value, one of the added value that Dr. Catherine Tech was explaining to us when she was describing the CCD and how an enabling environment for harmonizing it's one of their aims, right? And what the fifth section, it's accountability. Well, great takeaways. I cannot. I take the last one because it's the fresher one. Let's say from Mr. Abba. But when we are talking about power imbalances, when we are talking about local voices, when we are talking about bringing the participation, as Mrs. Mimidu was sharing, and the different participatory budgets, experiences. Community monitoring, well, has been shared a lot of experience here. And at the end, of course, the last section also with all the annex, which are really technical and interesting. So We really recommend them. They talk about meal frameworks, third-party monitoring, independent meal markets. Not forget about markets monitoring assessments. So, of course, the cross-cutting themes, protection, gender and risks, disaster preparedness and linkage with social protection, greening, a lot of highlights in the policy about environmental assessment and impacts, and of course, the localization agenda that we hope it can translate into equal partnership with local responses. So now I will give the floor to each one of you to share with us in 1 minute, if possible, what collaboration means to you. Who wants to start? Mr. Nyanya Ranuvelo, again, we can switch to English for the ones that we don't speak French. Thank you. You're welcome.
Ok. Je tiens tout d'abord à vous remercier de m'avoir donné donc cette opportunité de parler au nom du gouvernement et de parler un peu de ce qui se passe ici à Madagascar. Pour moi, collaboration devrait signifier deux mots-clés. Co-construire les réponses, notamment à travers la préparation des réponses aux urgences. Et l'autre mot-clé, c'est Nexus. Nexus dans les aspects humanitaires, dans les aspects protection sociale et dans les aspects développement. À mon avis, ce sont les deux mots-clés qu'il faut retenir puisque c'est ce qui manque en ce moment. Merci, merci et merci.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So who is next?
Yes, I can go if this way.
Yes, but if you can turn on your camera if you want.
Okay. Yes. So yeah, in my collaboration, I understand it's about bringing what different agency or different organization has to the table and to show that which one works well and which one can be taken to see that the intervention is improved. It's about the duplication of data. It's about knowledge sharing. It's about participation. It's about understanding each and other organization, just like what we do in the CCD network here in Northeast Nigeria. It's about even knowledge sharing. That is how I took our own collaboration in our own thing. I hope that's I can able to answer the answer, but do you want me to also talk about harmonization too?
Sure, of course.
Okay, yeah. Yes. So harmonization for me is a process more of bringing one or two ideas into a table to agree on an amicable way of working together. It's bringing life. A simple example is like harmonizing a key informant data or analyzing each data to make a very easy way out or a solution out of that information that we receive. Yeah, over to you.
Fantastic. So, Mrs. Mimidou, do you want to share with us what collaboration means to you?
Okay. For me, collaboration means a lot because no knowledge gained is lost. And for me, every day is a learning process. So if I bring on board what I have learned, and for instance, Abba brings what he knows, and we put into the pool, and we work towards domesticating whatever we put into the pool, then we are collaborating. So collaborating, as for instance, when you gather data, and especially on the protection risk, and you share those data, someone can pick part of the data you have gathered and shared, and can build on that data, or can, revert back to you to see how you can move, whatever recommendations you have from that data to expand on them. And then also, also in terms of if you develop plans like mitigation plans, and you jointly develop mitigation plans with collaboration. For instance, in the CCD that we both belong to, we have had, we meet every month and we discuss how we can move the processes, identified processes forward. For me, those are collaborations. And if in the event we are able to jointly carry out, I mean, for instance, look at this panel discussion now. I'm on the panel and Abba is on the panel. This is collaboration for me because I have learned something from his presentation, and I believe he has picked one or two things, and also the other person has also picked something from whatever we have talked about here. So for me, it's collaboration. Collaboration can come in different forms and different angles, so long as we have the same aim and objectives to meet and strategy to, and target to meet whatever we have agreed to collaborate on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would like to wrap up, and I will give you the floor to close, Catherine, if you are. It's okay. I just wanted to summarize what collaboration means for our panelists. Well, first I will take the highlight of what Mrs. Midu was saying. This is also one form of collaboration. As long as it's a process, as long as we have joint aims. So this is really important because that means that we need to hear each other to have and construct joint objectives before the response starts. I want to also make the link between what Mr. Ranovello and Ava were really reinforcing in terms, Ms. Mimidu, I'm sorry, on preparedness, right? On, again, it's we need to jointly have a plan to prepare ourselves if we really want also to be embedded into long-term solutions and start talking about nexus. Concrete examples of what collaboration or harmonization also, deduplication, knowledge sharing, participation, etc. So a lot of examples also from what CCD can bring into the table. I don't know, Catherine, if you want to share what collaboration means also for you, and to close the event, if your connection allows you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate. And I would like to really reiterate what has been highlighted by our panelists. Collaboration is not easy. It is an ongoing process. It means a give and a take. It means sometimes to step back and let others move forward, or to even say we will not opt in, we will observe and we will contribute as we can from the rear. And this is something CCD is learning over time as we want to really emphasize the role of local actors. Here in the Ukraine response, I'm in Poland, we do have a number of CCD actors on the ground, but we also see that there's a lot of local actors that are scaling up and that have, for the first time now, planned to cash. I believe we have a new opportunity with this crisis, as horrible as this crisis is, that we as humanitarian actors really understand what does it mean to strengthen local people, local organizations, to actually become self-reliant, to be better in what they do best, the first responders, and they will also be the last responders. So I think CCD can put its best foot forward, as we have seen, together with CASCAP, together with government, together with donor partners like the EU and many others that really are critical to come together. We don't want to duplicate, we want to make efficiency happen, but at the same time, quality and impact of cash assistance and scale up multipurpose cash for the best of the affected people. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. So I think that it's time to close. I want to really, if collaboration means learning among each other, I have learned a lot listening to all of you. I hope that it was also useful and efficient and effective to also be here for all the panelists. There's a lot of hard work from them to this. It seems short, but there's a lot of hard work at the vaccine. So I would really want to thank the CCD also for inviting me. I really want to thank Mr. Ranovello, Mrs. Mimidu, Mr. Abba Yusuf, Catherine for inviting, Ingrid for supporting, Mary Ann from Our Vision for interpreting Celine, which is not, she's not connected, but also she from ACF. She has been of great support. With that, if any flag or any comment that you really want to share with audience, it's going to be recorded. We will share with everyone. If not, I think that we can close. And an applause for you all. And have a good day.